Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Hello and welcome to All for United's fan preview for the last game of United's season against Crystal Palace. I'm your host, Simon. I've got a great panel of Reds here tonight with me. I've got Reese, Marcus, Ben and Sati, and we're expecting Gav. There's always someone late for this, isn't there? Poor timekeeping, fellas. Anyway, yeah, we're gonna round off the season with the last final match preview. Obviously, still a little bit to play for. Avoiding the Europa Conference, shall we say? We're not going to say that we're aiming for the Europa League. We're going to say we need to avoid the Europa Conference because that's just completely embarrassing. Obviously, a disappointing result last time out as well. So, you know, there's some redemption to do as well, and the possibility that Ten Hag could be at Selhurst Park if we're to believe reports from earlier in the week. I mean, everybody said he was going to be in Manchester on Monday, and that didn't quite materialise today. But do you think that's going to have a big influence on the game, Reese? If he is there, does it give the players something extra to prove? I mean, surely he's seen the games from the last few weeks anyway, so you think that he's well aware of what's going on. But
I don't think so. I think we've just got to kind of get this season out of the way. I think Ten Hag turning up at the game at Selhurst Park is I don't know if the players are really going to read it too much into that. They know he's coming. They know eventually he will be there and will be in charge. Obviously, there's been talks of him mentioning that he wants the players back early from the break as well. So they're all kind of mindful of that. And I'm sure there's been talks that we as fans don't hear about between players and between coaches and stuff like that. So. Do I think it'll have an impact? I don't think it should have an impact. I think they should be wanting to put a decent enough performance in for the fans, considering the season they've had, regardless of whether the manager's changing or not. That's just my personal view on it. But obviously, subconsciously, it could have a slight impact as well. But I don't think it should. It should do, but it may do slightly. I think, Simon. But
yeah, what's your take on that, Marcus? Do you think it will give a bit of an extra incentive to up the game a bit? I mean, it doesn't take much for them to up the game at the moment, considering the standards and performances have pretty much been on the floor. But the players that are staying, you got to think that they got to they got something to prove and show that they're not as bad as they've been all year.
Yeah, perhaps that is. I think if it did have an impact, that would be a shame, honestly, because where have you been all season is what I would ask to those players if they did turn up on the last day, really. I think that's the one thing. I think Ten Hag turning up, for me, it shouldn't have an impact on the players, but if it does, man, it's like shame on them. Seriously, shame on them. And I think there definitely will be a few players in that camp who know that they've got a lot of work to do to convince Erik ten Hag that they will be an integral part of the system. And there's a lot of players who will probably fancy a second chance. Whether or not they deserve it is another, discussion entirely.
Yeah, definitely. Gav, what's your thoughts on it? I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the lineup that Rangnick goes with, really. I mean, it depends who ends up on the pitch, because we'll discuss the players that are going to be leaving. Obviously, we've talked about it previously, but I guess it depends on who he goes with and if it's a team full of players that are going to be here next season, really.
Well, there has to be an element of pride. There has to be an element of fighting for their place next season. There has to be an element of we need to show the fans that we are playing for them as much as we are for ourselves. There is still something to play for. It's not like it's on the beach, there's nothing to play for. I did sort of comment on a tweet earlier on saying that, okay, fair enough, we haven't won the Europa Conference League trophy, but that doesn't mean I want to be in it.
No way.
These guys that go out, whoever the 11 are, they aren't just playing for Ralph now. They've got somebody who's watching, who's going to be their manager next season, or the majority of them are good. He's going to be the one that's on the training ground. He's going to be there saying, right, these are the guys we want to keep. These are the guys that we need to move on. So it's not just about a pride thing. They have to basically earn the right to put that shirt on their back. to be able to say, you know what, you are Manchester United quality. We haven't seen that enough this season. And they've had 2 weeks off, so they're well rested. I mean, don't get me wrong, usually when they have a 2 week off for the international break, they don't come back too good. But it's the last game of the season. They have to show something. We can't just walk through another match and just hope everybody around us gives us a result. You know, there has to be a bit of fight, a bit of desire.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on it, Saturday? Do you expect Ten Hag to be there as well? I mean, I don't think we've necessarily had confirmation that he is going to be present. Obviously, he'll be watching the game in some capacity, whether it's remotely or there. But do you think it will make a difference? And do you think, basically, will it make a difference? Yeah,
I think I don't think it's going to play that much of an effect. In all honesty, I feel like Ten Hag has done a lot of his homework. Probably done a lot of his homework when he was announced United's manager, and actually got a good player profile of each individual and how they are, and has probably been keeping an eye all season of how they've been performing since Ralph's sort of taken over. So I think if he is there, if he is in the stands or amongst the group, I think it should hopefully give some of the players a bit of encouragement and a bit of desire and commitment to feel like they should still be there next season. But I think, in all honesty, he knows who should be there and who doesn't. I feel like he's a manager that does his homework before the game properly and does his homework on the players beforehand. I think the biggest thing for it, I think, is the travelling support. That's who they should be more worried about. I was, just to touch on it, I was at the Brighton game, and that was the first time in years that I've ever seen the fans turn on the players, like the chant, especially "You're not fit to wear the shirt." That was actually a really big eye opener to show that actually they can actually see where the roots of the problem are. And so I think if Ten Hag is at Selhurst Park on Sunday, I feel like it should give them that little bit of encouragement and a bit of commitment to show their worthiness to be there next season. But I think the main priority is to give at least a sweeter taste for the fans that they finish on a victory.
Yeah. Would you say? I'll stick with you, Statty, on that one. Do you think it'll bring a bit of a feel good factor if he is there for the fans' perspective?
Yeah, I feel like it will give us a little bit of confidence and a bit more excitement. Is the best word to say going into next season, feeling a bit optimistic. Not to say, I still expect next season to be a bit of a roller coaster as well in terms of the players adjusting to his style and him getting used to English football. But I feel like this transfer window is really exciting. I feel like I just can't sort of wait for next season already. I just want this season to be done with, and just want to just look forward to next season already. So I feel like having his presence there will give the fans something to cheer about and be optimistic about, but secondly, give us a bit of a good feel factor going into next season.
Yeah. Well, we'll go to you next, Ben. Welcome to the preview show, mate. I don't think we've spoke before. Yep.
No, I haven't. No.
Good. Yeah. Do you agree with Saturday though? Do you think it'll bring a bit of a feel good factor? And would you say that it doesn't really matter if he is there or not because he's made up his mind, or would you say he's still got a bit to learn in person? I mean, there's possibly players that he hasn't seen loads of recently, just through not being selected, etc., etc.
No, I mean, for me, I think it'll be a culmination of, if the players who are going to be going turn up, well, he's not that naive to understand that they're not doing something because he's there. So the bullet's already gone. It can't be retrieved for those players. I think it'll be a culmination of, if he is there, obviously, like Sate said, for the fans, obviously seeing the manager in person, because it's, even though obviously you see it in the press and on TV and obviously him verbally speaking about it, it's not the same as him physically being there where the fans are. But I think for me, what I'd like to see, aside from obviously what Blakey said about the players actually for the final time, if they can muster it for one game out of 38, giving the fans something back, is the people who I think will be most excited, and I generally hope they do get the chance to show it, is some of the youngsters, because he's got such a reputation for developing youth, and we have an exceptional collection of youth players who wouldn't be out of place in the first team. So I think they're the ones who I genuinely would like to see get on the pitch to help get a positive result, because I think they're all going to not only be the bedrock for the club for future, but could potentially be huge selling points for him to think, you know what, I don't have to go and spend a shed load of money on a specific player because actually I can develop this guy.
Yeah. I think there's a sense that Rangnick just isn't going to do that, though. I think we've said it previously. He's kind of set his stall out there and said, the team needs to be 2 or 3-0 up before these players come in. But previously, also, he was probably avoiding playing some of them so that they're not like for Garnacho in the Brighton game. He didn't want him to get injured before the Youth Cup final, etc. So that's possibly been an influence as well.
I think if West Ham had have lost, I think he probably might have done, because obviously then they would have had that 3-point gap. Yeah,
like we said, there is still something to play for. Whether we're happy about the fact that we're trying to get in the Europa League or not is another discussion entirely. But it is something that we need to achieve as an absolute bare minimum on Sunday. Before we get to that kind of chat of whether we're going to manage to finish 6th or not, I think we should just touch on Ralf Rangnick as well, because obviously it's his last game before Ten Hag comes in. I just wanted to go around and get kind of a feeling of how everybody feels his reign's been, since it's pretty much at an end now. So let's give a rating out of 10, everybody. Starting with you, Reece, how do you think he's done in his few months in charge? Obviously, he's had a lot to deal with and a few issues that are beyond his control, but also from a managerial perspective, without thinking too much about what he's going to be doing going forward, how would you rate him as a manager?
I think we've had a couple of previous conversations where I've been a part of this topic, and I don't think I've been particularly kind to Rangnick, but irrespective of the issues that I think United have had in terms of characters and just general issues in the camp, I think looking at him sort of specifically as a manager, and I understand that he came in at a pretty tough time midway through the season when there was still quite a bit to play for, and he had a lot of characters already sort of breaking ranks. I'd score him sort of a 4 to 5 out of 10, really, if I'm honest.
Ooh, that's a bad one.
It's pretty poor. I mean, the reason for that is mainly because there were clear points in the season where, the first running he had, I think the first few games that he had were pretty winnable games. He chopped and changed the system that, we weren't particularly kind on the eye to watch, but he ripped it up completely and wanted to play this Gengham press, which was a naive thing to do midway through a season when clearly the players were never going to adapt in such a short space of time. It was very naive. He threatened the relationship with Ronaldo early on when he had to redeem that. He let Maguire suffer for too long when he should have been pulling him away from the spotlight and giving him a break and giving him a rest. He left him in there too long to receive the flack and become a bigger meme than anybody really wanted him to become. The formation issues that he's had, sometimes playing 5 at the back, playing a 4-2-2-2-2-2, whatever it was that he played. All the twos. It didn't work. That didn't work either. Took too long to introduce Mata into the team. Did it in the last few games where it started to sort of show signs of it working. Just the list goes on, and it just showed to me. It showed his inexperience as a manager, especially at a club of United size, a massive inexperience, both from a man management point of view and a tactical point of view. There's no doubt that Rangnick's obviously got huge plus points, and that's obviously his consultancy and his team building behind the scenes, and that's obviously something that he's going to offer to United as well. After this season's over, and that's kind of what he should have been there to do for me. But he, in terms of his management skills, it's been just diabolical, really, Simon. And I don't think, in hindsight now, it should have been something that we should have been doing midway through a season when there was still a hell of a lot to play for.
I can't disagree with a lot of that, to be honest with you, and I don't want it to be like a bashing of Rangnick on his last game or anything like that. But it's good to get a sense of how people are feeling about how it's gone. Marcus, have you got anything more positive to say, or would you kind of echo those sentiments?
I would echo most of those sentiments, actually, and I would add that the thing about Rangnick that's really disappointing is I think when we've played some of our best football was when we actually started Mata and Matic, and yet we never really saw them in the periods leading up to the last few weeks, which is really disappointing. We've seen the same old faces and the same old names continuously start despite form and despite merit, even though we complained about that under the previous manager. Now, granted, Ranić is an interim manager. Yes, he didn't build this team, so you can't really expect much from him. And yes, he is walking into what I believe is possibly the most chaotic period post Alex Ferguson, if you take everything into account, right? Like the stuff he's had to deal with off the field as well as on the field. I don't think any manager has had to deal with that post Sir Alex Ferguson. On top of that, we're on our longest trophy drought. We're one of the worst squads we've had in the Premier League era, just statistically and factually. So yes, Ranić has had a lot to deal with, and I completely understand that. But it doesn't excuse him from the responsibility of being manager of Manchester United and taking the blame when things go wrong. And I agree that, Maguire shouldn't have started as much as he did, simply because it wasn't helping him at the time when he was struggling with form. It would have been much better if Lindelof came straight back in, because I don't know if you guys remember, before Lindelof's house got burgled, he was actually starting under Ranić. And then all of a sudden he went away, and now all of a sudden it's like Ranić forgot. He completely forgot about that and just started playing Maguire again. I don't know why he did that. And that's just one example, So, yeah, I do feel sorry for Ranić, and I've made my thoughts on Ranić very clear. But for the purpose of this conversation, I think, I would also give him a 5 out of 10, But hopefully he can rectify some of the damage, or at least some of the stuff he's done wrong with his work behind the scenes.
Yep. Gav, are you able to fight in Rangnick's corner, or is it much of the same for you? I mean, I think you've been quite critical of the players as well. Would you place more blame on them than him, or would you still give him a low score? Even so,
I almost feel like I gotta give him 2 separate scores. You gotta give him the coach manager score, where you sort of question tactics, substitutions, lineups, things like that. You work with you know what you're working with, and you try and make the best of it. But then you feel like you've also got to give him a separate score for the press conferences and the interviews and what he's been doing behind the scenes. And eyes have been opened, and conversations are being had in the club that weren't being had under Ollie. And we can all say and sit here and go, it's been a breath of fresh air listening to him, the way he talks in press conferences, the tactical breakdowns, the not sugarcoating things, not protecting players or performances. It's been quite nice to actually have a manager who is speaking like the fans are speaking. And for what he's going to go on to do, that separate score is sort of attached to that. So for that, I'd put him sort of in the 7 to 8. But for the coaching side, that he's not really a manager coach. And I think coming in and dealing with the players that he's dealt with, I'm surprised we're where we are, to be honest, because he was on a hiding to nothing. There was no new manager bounce. There was no, we saw 30 minutes against Crystal Palace, and then he's tried everything to accommodate the players in those earlier months, trying to change the coaching and say, right, we're going to have a little bit more intensity. We're going to do a pressing and this, that, the other. Yep. Okay. That didn't work. Okay. We'll go back to the 4-2-3-1. He has tried to accommodate some of the players, and the players have got to take responsibility for a lot of what's gone wrong this season, because it was happening before Ralph came in, and Ralph just inherited it. But that doesn't mean that he's total absent from the blame. He has played his part. So for me, I'd probably agree and say it's a 5 for his coaching, managing, etc., etc. But I'd give him a higher score because of what he's been doing off the pitch and the way he's been sort of so open and vocal with regards to the running of the club, the players, the dressing room, anybody who's sort of using their mouth in social media. He never sugarcoats it. He comes out and says it as it is. It's been quite nice actually to see.
Yeah, I think we should be clear that his managerial reign, as long as he stays on, it's not going to define what he does for United, but it's going to have an influence on how he's remembered, possibly. So would you say that, and would you say that he needed to do more to affect change? I mean, he was quite critical of the players, and Gav says that he tried to accommodate them, but did he burn some bridges? And and also what's your kind of score for him as well?
I think first and foremost is that we hired somebody that wasn't in a managerial position. We brought somebody in as an interim, and bringing an interim manager in, they don't often get the respect from the players because in the back of their minds they still understand that this person is an interim. Now the difference with that with Ralph being an interim to Ollie being an interim was that Ollie was a club legend. So in some scenario, they had to sort of give him some sort of respect and listen to his instructions. I think he would. I think Ralph is such an honest person. He would even say himself that his managerial career at Manchester United has been a failure. He hasn't been happy with the performances. They haven't listened to his instructions. He's been blunt and he's been ruthless and honest about it. And I actually score him quite high in terms of his overall whole impact at the club. I probably would give him leading towards the 7 and the 8. I was never going to judge him on his managerial expertise at the club because even before Ollie got sacked, I even had a conversation with Bainesy before. I said I just don't trust these players. I just don't know what it is. I said I just don't think mentally they're prepared and they haven't got that winning ethic and they haven't got that. They just down their tools. And when the going gets tough, they haven't got the mentality to cope with it. As soon as they hit that brick wall, they haven't got the physical capacity within themselves to break it. And I think that was what the worrying thing was. And I feel like he's stepped into a position where, like I think Marcus touched on it, and also Gavin said the same thing, that he inherited a squad that was full of issues. It wasn't a team. There was no cohesiveness. There was nothing. It was literally a group of individuals that didn't really have a clue what they were doing anyway beforehand, and he just inherited it. And I think that's what showed on the pitch. I mean, what he's done behind the scenes in terms of outing a lot of problems within the club and how the club is run, I will always have respect for that. The turning point for me in one of the games, which is where I felt right, something is not right, is when we lost on penalties to Middlesbrough in the FA Cup. That was the game for me where I felt right. Yeah, this is something where that for me the season was over then, because I thought if we didn't beat Middlesbrough in the FA Cup to go to the next round, then something is seriously wrong. And albeit it went to penalties and stuff, but I just felt like he just didn't get much of the support from the players, and I think that's what's been outlined during this sort of short interim managerial campaign, is that there's a lot of players that are at the root of the problems. I mean, he had to deal with, obviously, Lingard coming out with his comments. He also had Dean Henderson. There was a lot of leaks in the club and stuff like that. I mean, Maguire's performances as a leader, first and foremost, that didn't help anything. But I think Marcus touched on why didn't you bring Lindelof back into the fold? But if I'm not mistaken, I think Varane was picking up injuries after every 2 games. So I feel like it was almost like it was either going to be Lindelof and Jones or Maguire being the first choice centre back. I mean, I think he's done well. I mean, he always did say that you can't judge me on my managerial campaign at the club. It's what I do behind the scenes, and it was probably the right thing hiring someone like Ralph, because there was no connection to the club whatsoever. There was no sort of legendary status, or there was that sympathetic sort of meaning or subliminal message that he had with the club. It was almost that no one really knew of him. He was someone that would come in, finish us to the end of the season, and then sit in a consultancy role, and we'll get someone for the longer term project. So I feel like what is the bonus for him is that I don't think many people are going to look back and think, oh my goodness, why did we get Ralph Rangnick? Because at the end of it, we have got Eric Ten Hag. And I think that's what the bonus is from it. I feel like we have to sometimes look at the positives that he has outed the bigger main issues. I mean, we've said it season after season that that just paper overs the cracks, that just paper overs the cracks. But once that crack gets bigger, you're going to need to rip the whole thing out and start again to make sure that there's no cracks. So I felt like this is what he's done. He's come in, ripped it all out, and still hopefully still continue ripping it out, and then we can obviously rebuild it properly. So I think the manager, some obviously he still deserves criticism on some of the decisions that he makes in terms of selection, in terms of formation. I think touch on what Reece said there. It's like there was just too much going on at a time. You was playing 4-2-2, and then next minute you're switching it up to 5 at the back. And these players, we saw it under Ollie's interim spell as well, that once they do 2 weeks of high pressing and trying to do high intensity football, they all end up getting injured, and they're just not built for it. And I think that's what one of the main issues is. So I feel like he's done well with what he's had to deal with. He's been open and honest. He's been ruthless, and I think he's going to be remembered for actually the problems that he found within the club rather than the problems that he caused.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. And I for one, when it got announced, was pretty excited about it in a sense that I thought it seemed smart if he could put the foundations down.
Yeah,
in a sense where they started working harder, they became more organised, with a more tactically astute coach. For whoever came in, we probably thought it was going to be Ten Hag at that point, possibly Pochettino, obviously. But for me, the problem is that he's just not done any of that. He gave up on that really, really quickly. I mean, a stronger manager surely perseveres with that until the end of the season. I know the players are absolutely to blame for not taking it on board, but I just felt like he gave up on his principles way too early. And now we're talking about a team that has to feature Juan Mata and Nemanja Matic in a Rangnick side, a manager that should be delivering pressing football.
And that's the biggest issue. What you just said there. I was talking to somebody today. I said it's 2022 and Manchester United are subbing on Juan Mata and Phil Jones and Nemanja Matic at times and relying on these players to show that commitment and desire. I said that's where you know that there's problems.
Yeah, well, it's a sense of everybody's given up, in the sense of the players giving up on the field and the manager giving up with his long-held principles. But Tyrone says he feels sorry for the manager and no one could have turned it around. I mean, it is a sharp switch going from Solskjaer to Rangnick, but I think there's still in for a bit of a culture shock with Ten Hag if we're going to believe about his reputation. So, I mean, a lot of things need to change there. But Ben, we'll get your thoughts on that last off. Really, what would you rate Rangnick out of 10? And would you side with Sati in the fact that we should be praising him in some respects?
I think, to be honest, I had this discussion with my dad and my brother at the last game I went to, and you've pretty much asked him to put out several fires, knowing he can only put physically out one. And he was also not qualified to put that fire out in the first place. So it's almost to me, he's been brought in by the board, and their mask is he's going to be the interim manager, because then that caveat is so open. There's no sort of end to it. But fundamentally, it's right. This is what we want you to do behind the scenes, and that's the most pressing job and most pressing of issues. And then with the footballing side of things, just almost wing it. And I feel for him to a degree, because he's been brought in on the premise of what he does above a manager, which I've got no issues with, because I think he's been brilliant in that regard. But then it's then shown, because of how long he's been out of that loop within the managerial aspect, he's been brought into a perfect storm, because he had all the issues before he arrived. You've then brought him in when every player knows, like the substitute teacher, irrespective of what you say to me, love, you ain't the teacher. And you can talk till the cows come home about how good your system is, but if the people delivering the system don't want to buy into it, then it's irrelevant how good the system is. So I didn't see any issue with the fact that he changed it so quickly, because there's no point trying to flog a dead horse. If the players don't want to buy in to a system that could be the best system on earth, then it doesn't matter how good it is. I mean, I have liked the fact that he's been so honest and open. He's been so blunt about all manner of things within the club, which needed addressing and were never really vocalised, because people who were in prior to him were never in the position to want to do so, or felt they could, because of the position they maybe held, that they felt would have then been untenable if they had said something like what he has. But where I think he's been allowed to have a bit more free reign is the fact that he was in a Richard Arnold and John Murter appointment. So they've almost given him carte blanche. Well, we can't retract on allowing him this freedom because we're the ones that brought him in. So, and I think for me, even though yes, he's not qualified to be an interim manager on any level. I can't blame him solely because I think you've got so many small ripples that he's had to deal with. He was never going to be able to deal with them all because he wasn't qualified to deal with them all. And then you look at the players. Yes, they can turn around and easy option to say, well, the manager doesn't know what he's doing. Well, okay, that's fine. But you still know how to play football. Isn't that? It's not it's not that difficult of a sport to play. It's very simplistic if you want to put it that way. But they chose not to. And the easy option is to just go, well, you're going to be gone in the summer, mate. I'm not. It's going to cost far more to get rid of me than it is you. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to the game anyway now. Did you give him a score, Ben? Everybody else give him a score. Give him a score out of 10.
I gave him a 4 to 5 for managerial, but about an 8 for what he's done outside.
Yeah. I think that's probably the consensus, really, isn't it? I think a lot of people are happy with what he's putting in place and for out in the club in certain respects, but purely managerial wise, I think he's been a bit of a letdown and a bit of a disappointment in the sense that he just wasn't able to change things, just even with a fine reputation that he had. Anyway, we'll move to the game. Obviously, we are doing our best to get in the Europa League, which is obviously depressing, like we've said. But West Ham have got a difficult game away at Brighton, and we do have to only worry about what we're doing. But at the same time, if any drop points for us puts us in danger on Sunday. What do you think we need, Reece? Do you think we need a win, or and can we get one? Recent performances don't really indicate that it's going in that direction. And Selhurst Park's a bit of a difficult place to go. We've always had tough games there, even if we have managed to win a few of them.
Yeah, it's funny. I went to this game at Old Trafford this season, and it was Ranić's first game. We won 1-0, and Fred scored the winner, if anybody recalls that goal in the last 15, 20 minutes. So it wasn't a particularly great Palace side that day, and I think with Palace, they're that type of team where they've got some mercurial talents, haven't they, in the team. And on the day they can give anybody a bit of a fright, but when they're not working hard enough, then United should have a pretty easy day. I think, regardless of Palace, I think if we put our mind to it, we actually knuckle down and we put a performance and a gritty performance. I think we all know that the results should have been a lot better this season, and Palace shouldn't really be that much of a test that we're worried about getting 3 points from. And I've got no real doubts looking at the team on paper and what they're capable of, that we shouldn't get 3 points, but based on form and everything else, it's a different story, isn't it? I think traditionally, this season we've been a little bit better after sort of breaks that we've had. Obviously, we've had a little just over a week's break, week and a half break. So do we come back a little bit fresh faced, and that might fare in our favour, that we'll be a little bit better and put a better performance in? I'm not sure. I think irrespective again of West Ham, I think we've just got to and Europa League, as much as that's a massive pull for us as well, to give us some European football at a high level. I think we've just got to put a good performance in for the fans. That's kind of what we want to see, isn't it? Just a good end to the season, where potentially as well, I've been calling for the younger players as well. Hopefully now the Youth Cup's out of the way, that a couple of the younger players get the chance to kind of show what they're all about. Garnacho in particular, and maybe I saw Savage's son on the training pictures this morning, but I'm not sure if he's particularly one of the talents we want to see next season. But I'd like to see Garnacho turn up for 15 minutes before the end of the game and show what he's about. Yeah. But for me, Simon, it's mainly just putting in a really good performance. I think if putting a good performance, the points will come with it. And yeah, that's kind of what it's about for me. Just making sure that the players put in a bit of a decent farewell, as opposed to the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to call, isn't it, Marcus? Because in some respects, Crystal Palace could be on the beach. United could be. I mean, United look like they've had a bit of time away in the last week or so. Some of the players, but is it going to be two sides on the beach, or is it going to be sides looking to play for what they can? I mean, Palace can finish in the top half, which isn't, not something they often do. Is that there is a bit of incentive, and they have been decent this season under Vieira. So, do you think it'll be a game that kind of just drifts away, or do you think they'll feel like something's on the line?
Well, if the first game is anything to go by, I think it will be a very difficult game, because even though a lot of people agree that first half an hour against Crystal Palace was probably one of our best of the season, it still wasn't a fantastic game. I mean, we did struggle to break them down and actually create clear-cut chances. I believe we only had one shot on target that entire game, so that tells you everything you need to know. And the thing about Crystal Palace is, yes, I haven't watched a lot of them, and I'll be the first to admit that, but the few times I have watched them, I have actually been impressed with them. So I think, they're at home. It's their last game of the season. I think they're going to be up for it. And I think even though they don't really technically have anything to play for, because it really doesn't matter if Palace win, like, it's not going to change much in terms of their season, they'll still want to put in a really strong performance. So I think it'll be a huge test for United. And for me, I think we have a better chance of winning if we see Mata, Matic, and perhaps even some of the young players get involved. If we see the same old culprits starting, and we don't see the same team, I believe it was against Brentford. Granted, we went on the next week to get embarrassed by Brighton, but against Brentford, I think we played very well. I think if we filled out that team, there is a chance we could dominate the game against Palace and coast home, So for the first time, I'm weirdly optimistic about United actually winning this game. But again, it's no disrespect to Palace.
I don't think many people have said that on previews in the last few months, but that's good. Actually, we try and have a little bit of optimism on these previews. Gav, what's your take? Yeah, are you positive about it? Are you confident? I mean, like we've said, Selhurst Park is a pretty difficult place to go. Is it a place for experience to get us over the line and into the Europa League?
Well, we have had mixed results at Selhurst Park over recent matches. Could we have a repeat of Matic with the goal of the season that he did that one year on his last game for the club? Squad selection, that's going to be the important thing. That's going to be the interesting thing, because whoever he picks, that's going to be what will define how the team play, because there are players that need to come out of the team that aren't really performing. We've got Sancho coming back into training. Shaw's coming back into training. That's really positive. Hopefully they can get some minutes. I do think we should have a mixture of youth and senior players. But players like Maguire, Rashford, maybe Tellez, I think they need to sit this one out on the bench, maybe come on as impact subs. I am feeling cautiously optimistic. I think having that 2 weeks off, Palace are playing on Thursday, aren't they? I think they're playing.
Yeah, playing tomorrow night. Everton, yeah.
Yeah,
Everton,
so they got a short
they got Everton away, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Everton have got something to play for. So that isn't going to be an easy match for Palace. What we can't do is go into it relying on other people's results. We've got to go in. We've got to be dominant. We've got to want the ball. We've got to work for it. And we've got to try and get the points, because it is in our hands. And, show something. Show that you can actually put a performance in to finish the season off. It's not where we want to be. We literally get to the end of the season. We finish on a relative high, not the highs that we wanted, but it's a positive that we're in. I think we got the best chance of getting into the Champions League through the Europa League. So this is sort of why I'm more happy to go into the Europa League than anything else, because at least there's an opportunity, should you win it, to go into the Champions League. Top four is going to be very difficult with ETH's first season, plus the other teams that are sort of vying around that. I don't know whether we're going to be up to the level of fourth that quick. I'd like to be. I'm not saying we shouldn't be fighting for it, but I think if we can sign off in a positive way, it doesn't leave a bad taste in the mouth, and we can go into the summer and we can say, right, not the best season, it's done. Get the players out who want to go, bring players in who are hungry and want to be there, and let the manager do what he wants to do, and then we just give time, patience, everything we can do is basically give him everything that he can do. So if he says, I think I want to sell Rashford, we've just got to say, yep, you know what? If that's what you want, go for it. If he says, I want to keep Maguire and I want to play him as the captain, then we're just going to say, fair enough, if that's what you feel is the right thing to do. This isn't going to be fixed overnight, but Sunday can be that first step. So you want to end on that high. You don't want to be going into the summer with that, either the Conference League or, that sour taste in your mouth. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, I like what you said there, actually, because that's always something I think about before international breaks, where you hate if we get a bad result before international breaks, and then you got 2 weeks of everybody feeling down about things, and you can imagine the mood if that lasts for 6-7 weeks or whatever before pre-season. So yeah, I think that is important. And another thing that you said there that I hadn't really thought about, in the sense of the Europa League being another route to the Champions League, in case we're not up to the task of finishing in the top four next season. I mean, I kind of just gear myself towards, we should at least be finishing the top four, but it does provide another route into the Champions League. You are right, though. So that adds extra importance, doesn't it, Sati? I would say. And obviously, they need the win anyway for the positivity. But do you think that'll be in their minds as another way to get them into where they need to be next season?
Yeah, I think we've had this discussion on a previous show whether we should go for the Europa League or finish out of all European competitions altogether. And I was quite pro for the Europa League, saying that it's more game time where the players get to actually work on a match day event where they can embed Ten Hag system, because it is gonna be a massive culture change to a lot of these players, considering how many of them are still going to be here first and foremost. But it's going to be a lot of demanding physicality, mentally, and the more games, really, the better, in my opinion, because I feel like that's the real life situation for them to learn. There will be mistakes, but we just have to accept that, because they have to learn from it properly, and it will give the manager an eye for detail of where the areas definitely need improving on, and what fine details and fine tuning that need to be made. So I feel like the Europa League is an important competition at the moment for United, especially as Gav said as well there, that it's another route to the Champions League. Like, next year is going to be difficult. You can probably see, if Tottenham do qualify for the top four, you can see them strengthening. I mean, you can see if Chelsea Sal go through and they're allowed to uplift their bands, you can see them strengthening. Liverpool will probably get a few additions, same as City. So it will be it is looking likely to be a bit more competitive next season. So we're having the Europa League there as a sort of like a plan B, if you like, for if top four fails. I think it's important to have that. It's better to have more chances than no chances, and limit our chances. So I think it's important that we look to go for the win on Sunday in order to put ourselves in the best position possible, regardless of what West Ham are doing or other teams around us. We just need to prioritise the win on Sunday and give us the best possible finish that the fans deserve, first and foremost, and secondly, it just give them maybe a bit of a spring in the step going into pre-season, and hopefully it'll give them a sort of encouragement going into next season as well. So you rather finish on a sweet taste rather than a bitter one, is what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, do you think the Europa League providing Champions League football next year will give them the extra impetus? Do you think they'll be thinking about that on Sunday? Is kind of what I'm asking there, or will it not be in their minds? And it's just European football, and the bigger picture might not matter to them.
I mean, I think in terms of the game itself, I'm always optimistic, even though I've been horrendously proved wrong this season about being that optimistic. But I think, no, for me, I think the players just have to focus solely on the 90 minutes, forget anything else in terms of the ramifications of if it's a draw, a win, or a loss, and just focus on putting a good performance out for the fans as a last hurrah before the summer. In terms of the Europa League, I mean, for me, I had a chat with my friend about this, and he was sort of like, "Oh no, it needs to be the Champions League." And I was like, "Well, for me, I actually think Europa League is fine because we aren't as much as we want to be a Champions League club because of the size of the club that we are. Right now, we aren't, and that's a fact. So it's better to go into a competition where you've got more positivity going forward in terms of the manager being able to play his system, embed people in that, get positive game time and positive results, which could ultimately lead to a trophy, then we fluke getting into the Champions League and get trounced in our group and then go into the Europa League. And then even though we're going into the same competition that we're going to go into anyway, you're going into it on such a negative footing. Whereas we'd be starting off in it anyway. So you'd be going into it already on the premise of, right, United should be going for the win. It's all positive in that respect, rather than United have been dumped out of the Champions League. What a blemish that is already on Erik ten Hag's CV. We can't even keep them in the group stage. So it's what you know what I mean, and that rhetoric then just builds and builds and builds because we are such a left and right club in terms of the media bias. So for me, I don't see an issue with it. At the end of the day, I would rather go into a competition that's perceived as being a lesser one to the big one, and at the end result is we've won it, and we've had such a progressive season under Ten Hag in what he wants to bring to the football club and how he wants the players to play. Then we go into the Champions League, get knocked out, and then we get knocked out by some club from Uzbekistan who you've never heard of because it's just a snowball effect from the Champions League failing.
It's more of a building block kind of competition for us, but failing to get into the Europa League puts us in again. It adds some negativity, doesn't it? Because where can you get to from there? You can only get to Europa League, and if you're in them competitions, you tend to be affected in your league form as well. In the sense that top four battles become harder when you're traveling here, there, and everywhere on Thursday nights. So it's all a knock-on effect, like you say.
I think for me, I think it's retrospective. I think you have to look at, take for instance, Rangers. Nobody would ever envisage them getting to a final of the Europa League anyway. They always get slammed, both clubs, for doing horrendously bad in the Champions League or never even making it to the group stage. So no matter what happens to Rangers tonight, it's a monumental positive. And I think that's how you have to look at it from our perspective. We're going to be in a far better position than Rangers are to get to a final, given the calibre of player that we can go after and the level of player that we can attract compared to Rangers. But look at the projection that could give a club. Because if Rangers win tonight, because I don't actually know what the result is, think where that could set them. They've never won that trophy before. You've never had a Scottish club win a European trophy, I think, since, was it Sir Alex with Aberdeen? It's been considered a major one. So look at the boundaries that's going to break for them in football, but also the club. Whereas you look at the Celtics, they can never even qualify for the Champions League. It's always negative.
Yeah, I do think there is some importance placed on this. So just the long-term ramifications, whether we're happy about it or not, I think it is important to get this over the line on Sunday. So I just hope that is in the players' mind and the long-term ramifications are, at least present in their mind. Last thing I want to get to before we start to pick our lineup and do predictions and all that sort of stuff is, obviously, it's going to be not just the manager leaving, but a lot of players are going to be either playing the last game or, in the squad for the last time, or some of them will possibly miss out on the squad entirely. But I just wanted to get a sense of, are we going to miss any of the players that are departing in a fond sense, I suppose? I mean, it's easy to be negative and, pan these players, but some of them have done some good stuff for the club. So I just want to get your standout ones that you're kind of going to miss from the departing bunch. Not necessarily ones that we're speculating that might leave, but ones that we're pretty sure that are going to be off. So, Reese, who would you pick for the departing bunch to wish a fond farewell to?
It's going to seem like I'm completely negative about Man United, isn't it?
None of them.
I suppose in a certain sort of way, it was disappointing that Lingard didn't bounce back. Obviously, he had a great loan spell last season, and it would have been nice for him to sort of kick on this season and show what he was what he was about. And it just didn't work out for whatever reason. I didn't feel like he got given a chance really, and then when he did, it was too late, or moments where he wasn't really going to do much, and it never really took on, did it from there? But there's not a lot of players that I'm really going to miss, Simon, and I think mainly because it's time, isn't it? It's come the time now where either the players need to move on for their own sake, i.e. like Lingard, potentially players coming back from loan like Martial who kind of need to move on. And there's just, obviously Matic is moving because he's near the end of his career. Mata could be the same. Pogba, it's just not worked out. So there's not really much fondness really for any of the ones that are kind of moving on. They're either for reasons that are sort of personal reasons, or it's to either further their own careers, or time has just come and the chaps has just closed on their careers at Man United. So I think from a mutual perspective, I think it's just better for both parties. I think for a lot of the players that are going to be leaving, that we part company and try and move on and get something else from the players that we've currently got still there. So there's not. I feel like I'm just
you're a ray of sunshine tonight, mate. Ray of sunshine.
Real pessimistic, Anna. Yeah.
No. It's fair enough, but I'll word it differently for Marcus. I know that this season is obviously swamped with negatives and stuff, but over the time of the departing players' time at United, who would you look back on most fondly, and ignoring the fact of why they're leaving, or whether it's time or not really?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I'm gonna go for the unpopular picks, and I'll explain why. But for me, the players that stand out of our current crop, Pogba's definitely one. Martial, I know a lot of people don't like him, but the reason why those two stand out to me the most is because they were actually there when we won trophies, which is a positive memory. And I can't say the same for a lot of other players in this current team. And yeah, you could throw Rashford in there, you could throw a lot of other players, but since we're talking about players who are actually leaving, those are the ones that come to mind. Mata and Matic, I won't really miss them, but I do feel bad for them leaving, because I feel like we did not use them as much as we should have, and we didn't get the best out of them. We often talk about not being able to unlock Paul Pogba, and how Paul Pogba, it just didn't work out. And Martial, whether you think he was lazy and he didn't work hard enough, whether you think it was a club or the combination of the two, we often talk about those players a lot, but I don't hear a lot of United fans talking about what went wrong with Mata and what went wrong with Matic, because when we signed Matic, I believe he might not have been in his prime, but he was coming from a Chelsea team that had recently just won a title, no? So someone can correct me if I'm wrong. And we signed Mata around the time where he was still had a lot to give. And we never really saw him playing the number 10 position or get given an opportunity in the midfield consistently at Manchester United to do what he did so well at Chelsea. So I am definitely not necessarily going to miss them, but I feel really sorry for those players, because I feel like their legacy has been tainted. They're almost forgotten footballers, Matt and Matic. They were really good at Chelsea, and somehow their legacy at Manchester United is just known for being the bench players that, whenever we see them coming on, we're like, oh my God, how bad is this season then that we're seeing them two come back on? And it's sad, because I think they're quality footballers. So,
that's exactly the sort of answer I was looking for, Marcus. Though, because we're not just thinking about the last few months and last few seasons. A few of these players have been here for a while, and I think it's does them a disservice to completely disregard them. I'm not saying that you've done this, Reese, or anything, but I want to put a positive spin on this. No, I'm not having a go. All right. But yeah, I want to put a bit of a positive spin on it. JR agrees with you there, Marcus, and we kind of screwed Juan Mata over by playing him out of position, and it is a shame. And he is one person I will look back on and have some fond memories at least. I mean, he did some good stuff for us. He's got, he had some good games. He's had some good games recently, which is, probably quite surprising, but shows the talent he is. And it is a bit of a shame. It is a bit of what could have been. Gav, any standouts? Any standouts for you?
I actually hope that once he's retired, that he either comes back as like a club ambassador, because some of the stuff that he does for the club, the way that he speaks about the club, the charity work that he does, he really does. He's a bit like Herrera in the sense of the way that he holds himself around the club. So maybe come back as a coach or a club ambassador like Ji-sung Park, because there's a warmth when it comes to Juan Mata, because there's no doubt in his ability. Even now with his football IQ, you just don't lose it. And you saw his quality a couple of games ago when he played. It's just he hasn't really got the legs now. So I think going off to Spain to retire is a good thing for him. He can go, not have the pressure of trying to run a team like United, which is a team in transition. Matic as well, we've had our ups and downs with him, but you look at him in that midfield three after Project Restart, he was like the young Matic that we saw at Chelsea, and the player that we were buying, that kind of quality player that we were buying. And when he has been called upon and played, he has really controlled that midfield. You've seen an improvement. We just haven't seen him played enough, really. Whether that's through injury, whether that's through old age, you just don't know. But we've all said at one point or another, if we had a younger Matic, we'd be fine. So those two, obviously, I am going to say goodbye fondly. Anthony Martial, I don't like how it's ended. It's got a little bit sour towards the end, especially the way that he went on loan, the butting of heads between him and Ranić. I think that one is probably going to leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth because of how it's going to go down. It would have been nice to have parted ways amicably and just gone separate ways, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that way. Same with Lingard. I think he thinks he's better than what he is. And the way that he's been with the club, the disrespect, like the posting of him in a West Ham shirt when he's still in a United shirt, he came through our academy, he came through our youth, and, you don't expect a player who is one of our own to do something like that. So again, there are memories, but I don't think it's going to be the fond farewell that he should have had. I mean, look at the last game. We brought Cavani on and we didn't bring him on for his last hurrah, and his brother went nuts. Pogba, well, it's the saga that hasn't really been a saga. I think before COVID, he was going to go that summer. COVID hit, he couldn't go, and it's just been this long, drawn out, will he, won't he, even though we probably knew that he will go. On his day, there's no doubting his qualities, but we just don't see him on his day enough. So, again, good moments, good memories, the 3-2 with the City comeback, but I think it's time for us to part ways with him. So, mixed emotions, I think, is the best thing.
Yeah, definitely with a few of them, and it's a good point you raised there. I think a few of them have tarnished their exits a little bit, either by what's happened this season or just recent activities. I mean, Cavani's going to be a weird one Saturday, I think, because I think he's a bit of a cult hero the first season and maybe not as much now. But again, we look back with a bit of fondness on his first season at least. And yeah, Lingard is another one really that's kind of gone a bit sour, but there's arguments on both sides for that one. But what would you make of those two particularly? And have you got any standout ones that you would, wish a fond farewell to?
I think in regards to Cavani, like you said, the first season it was a great sort of, like you said, unsung hero. He was that person that come off the bench, score the winner, get us back into games, led from the front, was that leader, and gave us sort of like a good feeling as well, like encouragement for the other lads around him, which was nice to see. And it is going to be sad to probably see a lot of them go. Even when Jesse Lingard goes, it will be like Gav said, mixed emotions. But I think listening to everyone's comments, and the thing that stuck into my head was that of all of them that are going, not one have we sat there and said, actually, I wish this person wasn't going.
Yeah.
So it actually, in hindsight, it is a bittersweet moment, because we know that we need to improve in the areas that are going, and we also know that the players that were, well, evidently that are in those positions who are leaving, they're clearly not good enough to play for Manchester United, and otherwise we'd be begging them to stay, and as fans we'd be wanting them to stay. So I think it's a bittersweet moment. I feel like Cavani and Lingard did let themselves down, I think, towards the end of, obviously it's going to be the end of their careers at Manchester United if Lingard does end up leaving. I feel like they've let themselves down in terms of a little bit of their professionalism. And I think the three standouts that I did have was Matic, Mata, and actually Phil Jones if he does leave, because I felt like they kept their professionalism throughout. Even when they were sitting on the bench, even when they were in training, they still kept that. They still kept that discipline, and they still never let it affect anything outside of the training ground, if you like, and filter back to the media. With the likes of Dean Henderson and Lingard and Cavani, they had other things to say. There was a lot of other sort of topics coming out, and even down to Martial, it was the same thing, and now even Rashford. So I feel like them three haven't let themselves down, and I think they've showed their maturity, and I think that's the key thing here. They've showed their professionalism and their maturity for the club, and they probably respect the club a lot. And I think, not to say the others don't, but I feel they have a bit more respect to the club and actually are thankful for Manchester United giving them an opportunity and giving them a chance. I think Lingard, he's probably deep down hurt about how the situation has evolved, and but it's just, all it requires is a little bit of honesty. I mean, Ralph, he didn't hold back in the interview. He didn't avoid the question like most managers would. He turned around and said, he asked to leave, to be left out the squad for personal reasons, and he hasn't trained. He goes, so I wasn't going to just throw somebody on just to get a farewell. So I feel like it's almost that I feel, why does he feel obliged in order to get a farewell? He shouldn't need to get a farewell. I mean, I didn't see him tweet or say anything about Mata and Matic when they potentially played their last games at Old Trafford, but he did for Mark Noble. So it's just a little bit of for me, just a bit of a contradiction there as well with Jesse Lingard. So I think overall, looking at it, there's not one player. Probably, unfortunately, I mean, I've always been a big fan of Paul Pogba on his day. Like Gav said, I haven't seen him on his day enough in a Manchester United shirt. But he's a phenomenal footballer, and if he does end up going to PSG or Juventus or Madrid, wherever he may be, he's going to show his brilliance, because he is a fantastic footballer. But it just hasn't worked at Manchester United, and it hasn't worked enough. So I think it's a bittersweet moment. There's not many players there, not any, I would say, that we're begging to wish they were signing a contract. It's time that they do move on, and it's time for fresh identity and some fresh talents to come in.
Yeah, a little bit of vindication there for Reese's point there, because I do agree that there's not many, if any, that we're thinking, I wish this wasn't the case. So I think there is absolutely that angle to it, but it's just ended a bit poorly for a few of them, like you said there, for various other reasons. Ben, we'll come to you last. I know it's hard coming last when you're when everybody's kind of made points before you, but any that you'll particularly miss, and anything further to add to what the other guys have been saying there?
For me, I think it's more. I'm not going to miss any of the players that are going, because I think it's the coming to the end of this chapter where we can close shop of everything that's happened post Fergie, pretty much with all the players that are leaving, and then start afresh with Erik ten Hag moving forward. In terms of personally, I think Mata, because I think just because of who he is as a person, and what he does both on and off the pitch, which he doesn't have to, but he chooses to because he wants to make a difference. And he scored some cracking goals, especially the Liverpool goals. And I just would have loved to have seen him under Fergie, because I think we would have probably seen him more in the position that he would have shone in, like he did at Chelsea. Matic, again, because I think he was tremendous, but obviously never seemed to get used when it almost cried out for him. In terms of the other players, Pogba for me was, my dad always calls Pogba the extras you have on your plate, but you never really want to eat, but you just have him there because it looks good. To be honest with Pogba, he's like a Rubik's Cube. I've got no idea how to figure him out, because on his day he's brilliant. But I think the problem with Pogba is there's too many things that have to be right for him to be able to do that. And unfortunately, that's just never going to happen at United. One, because of where we are as a club currently, but two, because of the club that we are. We're never really like that. Lingard, I understand his frustration, but it's a two-sided relationship. You can't expect to just be given everything that you want because you know you're not going to be there at the end of the season, but not put anything in to warrant being brought on. From both an output perspective on the training pitch, but then also an attitude perspective. He should have gone when he came back from He should have never come back from West Ham, in my eyes. And I think that would have been the perfect send-off for him, because as United fans, we'd have gone, you know what, all the very best. You're not going to be a first teamer, but we're pleased that you've gone on to do something for yourself at a club that you found fits your level. Martial, for me, he's the biggest disappointment of them all, really, besides even above Pogba, because he's got so much talent, but I've never seen anybody look like they have the worst job on earth than he does. He almost looks like he has the world on his shoulders, and if he doesn't do something, he's going to die at the end of the game. But he's got everything about him. I mean, the goal he scored against Liverpool to announce himself almost encapsulates everything about him as a football talent. And then the Man City game as well, where Alan Shearer said it was one of the best centre-forward games on their own up front that he'd seen in his time since he'd retired. But you then look at everything else about him, you just think, I wish he'd understand how much of a talent he had and how much we wanted him to do well as fans. But it's kind of apt that it's finished how it has with him with Sevilla, because that's kind of almost been how he's been at United. He's had his absolute moments of majestic talent, but there've been too many little smatterings. The rest of it's all been just nothingness, which I think kind of culminates into the whole post-Sir Alex up to Eric Ten Hag era, really. Yeah,
I'd agree. I mean, we're not entirely sure that Martial's going, are we? I'm not. I don't think it's not. That one's not particularly set in stone. I know Gav mentioned that as well. I mean, it feels like one that is likely, but possibly Ten Hag might fancy him. We don't know. I mean, he's not made much of a case. I would definitely agree on that one.
One thing I will say about Martial is when he is on it, the hold-up play, the way that he brings the ball, when the midfield get it to him and the wingers bomb down, he can pass, he can hold it up. When he's on it, he is a quality player. It's just getting him on it. And the affection towards Phil Jones from the fans when he came back and played, he's had a lot of banter over the years from the fans. But for him to come back into that team this year and play, and the way that the fans welcomed him, I just wanted to add that, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, there's a respect there. Aside from all the banter for Phil Jones, I think there's definitely a respect there from most level-headed, sane Reds. So I would echo that one as well. Before we finish, we're just going to go quickly pick everybody's lineups and see what team we can put together for this one. I think we're mostly fully fit, I believe. I mean, Reece was talking before about Sancho coming back. I think it might have been before we came on air, but Sancho, Shaw, Rashford all being back in training. You'd think that is with an eye to them being involved. Otherwise, you might as well have sent them on holiday rather than bring them back for 3 days' work. So obviously, we don't know the absolute ins and outs until Rangnick's done his press conference on Friday. But so we're taking a bit of a run up. But on that note, Reese, we'll start with the back line, and we'll go. You can pick your defenders and you can pick your keeper, and we'll get this ball rolling. Who do you want to see, providing people are fit, etc.?
I'll go with who I think is most likely to play as well. I mean, I think De Gea definitely goes in goal. I think I think we could probably see Shaw if he's fit from training on the left. I think we'll probably get. I'm not sure if Varane is 100%. If he's 100%, I think he goes in there with Maguire. If Maguire's back in training as well, isn't he, this week?
Mm-hmm.
And probably see Dallo on the right. I think that's how I think the back line will kind of line up. I don't think we'll see many shocks really in there. If I'm honest, I know that Alvaro Fernandez, young left back, was in training as well, but I don't think we'll see him start or anything daft like that. So I think we'll see probably Shaw come back and yeah.
Marcus, who are you fancying to be involved? Who would you prefer to see starting at the back and in goal? Any shouts for Dean Henderson? I mean, a lot of people have stuck with De Gea on these preview shows, even though online, there's a bit of a call for Henderson to be involved most of the time.
Yeah, I'm definitely not on the Henderson hype train. I'm David De Gea all the way. So sorry to disappoint any Henderson Hive members, but yeah, David De Gea has got to be in goal. Luke Shaw, I think, Telles has just been dreadful recently, and I like Telles. I was a huge advocate of him starting ahead of Shaw earlier on in the season, but a lot has changed since then. It's the last game of the season. Just get Shaw in there, get some minutes into his legs before preseason. Probably like to see Varane and Lindelof. I know that Maguire has been a scapegoat this season, and I'm completely aware that sometimes the criticism goes a bit too far, but I still stand by everything I've said about Maguire this season. I just think one game out the team against Crystal Palace won't do his reputation any harm. So, give him a day off and let Varane and Lindelof take the defensive responsibilities for a day, and then play Delo. Of course, because, with Wan-Bissaka, it's the same old story. So I feel like a broken record player, because I always say, he's great defensively, but, what more is there to his game? I don't think we've lost a lot of games this season purely because of Delo. I think that Delo, he's been all right. He's been all right on the balance of it. So, yeah, that's who I'll go with.
That's fair. I mean, there's a good chance that Aaron Wan-Bissaka just gets left there on Sunday. Gav, who are you going for your goalkeeper and your back line?
Pretty much exactly the same. The only thing about Aaron Wan-Bissaka is there was talk of him possibly going back to Crystal Palace. So I don't know whether we can factor that in at some point, but I don't think Dalot deserves to be dropped for his performances of late, because he's had to play both sides, and although he's not exactly the best on the left, he's still putting in a performance each time he's played. So I think I'd put him ahead of Aaron Wan-Bissaka anyway. So I'd go with the same back line.
As Marcus on that one, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're taking Harry Maguire out, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Lindelof and Varane, although they didn't play well against Brighton, when they have played this season, they have seemed to be quite a good partnership. And if we're going to be playing a high line, which I think we will against Crystal Palace, that doesn't suit Maguire's game. So I think, we need to take the game to Crystal Palace. And I've got a feeling Vieira might sit back. So I'm not use the pace of Zaha and that kind of thing. So I think for the match that we're going to be playing, it doesn't really suit Maguire's qualities anyway.
Yeah, fair point. Sati, who's your goalkeeper and your back line? Are you agreeing with Marcus and Gav, or would you throw Maguire back in? I think he played it. Oh, he was on the bench last time, wasn't he? So.
Yeah, he come on against Brighton, didn't he, for the last 10 or 15, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously De Gea will stay in stay in goal. I mean, I actually do think fullback is one of the biggest priorities that we have to fix for next season. I just feel defensively and positionally like they're not good enough. Any of them, they are really poor. So, but I think Dalot will probably start ahead of Wan-Bissaka, and I think it will be Maguire, Varane, and if Shaw is fit, I'd rather see Luke Shaw back at left back than Telles. So I'd probably stay with. I think that was the same as what Reece said. Yeah. So De Gea, Dalot, Maguire, Varane, and Luke Shaw is what I'd go for.
Yeah. So Ben's got the deciding vote here. It looks like over Harry Maguire or Victor Lindelof, unless you're going to chuck some random thing of Phil Jones at me. So go for it, Ben. Who's your goalkeeper and who's your back four?
Well, my back four, the back four that I would like to see would be De Gea, Shaw, Lindelof, Varane, Dalot. What I think we'll see is it'll be Varane and Maguire. But I would rather see Lindelof and Varane because Maguire he needs to have a holiday.
Well, we usually say that it's our preferred. Yeah, we usually say it's our preferred lineup. So in that case, Victor Lindelof gets the nod. So we'll update the graphic. Reece, who are you going for in midfield? Your on this occasion.
It's pretty tight, this one. I mean, I was kind of keen on saying Matic, Mata, and Bruno, just like as a three. But I'm gonna go with Fred. I think Fred will come back in there just to offer a bit of support. I think he's missed Fred, if I'm honest. He's had a good out of everybody this season. I think Fred's had actually a pretty decent season, especially second half of the season. So I think we'll see sort of Matic, Fred, and Bruno. Matic sort of sitting, Fred sort of offering a bit of support box to box, and then Bruno obviously just like kind of number 8, a bit further forward. But yeah, I think that's the three we'll I'd like to see anyway, or we'll most likely see.
We might see it, and it might be what you want as well.
Yeah, that'd be the best of both worlds, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Marcus, who are you going for on that front?
Yeah, this might shock a lot of people because Bruno's one of my favorite players, but I don't want to see him. He's been so frustrating this season. So just a breath of fresh air. I would love to see Mata, Lingard, and Matic in the midfield. Yes, in fact, no, Matic, Mata, and Fred. Sorry, I thought that Fred was still injured, so I was going to go with Lingard initially, but then I realized he's back in training. So probably don't want to start Lingard after all the off-field antics and the tweets about Mark Noble taking him under his wing and all that. So yeah, that's who I would go for.
So we've got Fred and Matic are popular so far. Obviously, then a bit of a shootout between Bruno and Juan Mata so far. Then Gav, you were next, I believe, on the regular order.
Well,
are you going for a midfield?
He's done it a couple of times now where he's moved Bruno out to the wing, and when we're playing that high line, if we're going to be going at Palace like I think we are, I think that's where the merits of having Juan Mata in the team are, because of that intelligence, the way that he can put his foot on the ball, he can ping out the pass. He's a little bit more composed on the ball than, say, a Bruno who's looking for that killer pass each time. And I think what Rangnick's done there is say, right, it's sort of like what Ollie did with Pogba in a sense. Yes, we need you in the team, but we're going to put you somewhere else. And there's no doubting that Bruno can play on the wing. But I think it'll be probably Matic, McTominay, and Mata. But I would like Fred over McTominay because of his tenacity, the winning of the ball, the pace. I think we all know McTominay's limitations, and my concern is Rangnick has talked about McTominay and Fred and how, when they play together, we don't tend to concede many goals, but that's mostly because we tend to keep a deeper line and we're not as progressive with the ball. If we are going to win this match, we need to be right high up the pitch. We need to be having the centre backs literally touching the halfway line, and we need somebody in the middle of that pitch who can have the intelligence to spot runs. We need people on the wings that are going to get the ball into the middle, and I think having the stability of Matic, the tenacity of Fred, and the intelligence of Mata, I think that could be quite good against a team like Palace.
For a shout, it's popular at the moment as well. That shout, Sati, are you going for your midfield? Assuming it's some sort of midfield three.
What I'd like is Matic, Fred, and Bruno, but I think it will be McFred and Bruno.
We'll go with what you want. So you're going for Bruno at number 10 and Fred and Matic.
Yeah.
So Fred and Matic are nailed on in our combined 11 there. But
I just think, I
again,
think it's going to be a midfield battle against Palace. They got really good athletic centre mid, especially Gallagher and players like that. So you're going to need someone to match that intensity. So I think Fred is a must.
Yep, fair enough. And Ben, you get the deciding call on who plays number 10. Also, you can give us your other two midfielders while you're at it.
I'd like it to be Matic, Fred, and
drum roll.
I'd like it to be Matic, Fred, and Mata, because I think he's played very well. But I have this sneaky suspicion that you might go McFred and Bruno.
Yeah, that has been the tried and trusted one. Well, we'll go with what you prefer because that's how we're building it. So, yeah, that is. I think that's what we did last time. Actually, we all put Mata in at number 10. I mean, it's not to say that we can't pick Bruno elsewhere if everybody feels like doing so later on. But as far as our midfield, we look like we're pretty set with that. So we'll fire that one off, and then that leaves the front line. Then, Reece, who are you going for up there? Have you got any surprises for me, or
I'll go with
more of the same?
Yeah, I think obviously Ronaldo starts centre forward, doesn't he? It's just a toss up between who's going to start right and left. I think we'll probably see Sancho coming back. I think we've missed Sancho. I'm not entirely sure which side he'll play. Don't think it really matters. He probably plays predominantly on the left, doesn't he, in Rangnick's system? So but I play with Sancho, and then on the other side, it's a toss up between Elanga and Rashford, and I'd like to see Rashford have another crack at it before the end of the season, and hopefully the breaks maybe done him some sort of good, and we get a little bit of positivity out of his form before the end of the season. So I'd like to see sort of Ronaldo, Sancho, and Rashford for front three.
That's fair enough. Just have to 1 second. Messed up, guys. I've messed up. Don't tell anybody. All right? There we go. Right, midfield. Right, so moving on to Marcus's front line then. Who are you having up top?
I think I'll go with Ronaldo, Sancho, and Elanga. I've been a huge fan of Elanga this season, despite his inconsistencies and the fact that a lot of people quite clearly don't like him. I just think he's kept it simple, and he's been everything we have been hoping that Rashford would be. You know, even though Rashford obviously is the better talent and obviously has a lot more behind him than Elanga. Obviously, no disrespect to Rashford or in any way, but we can all agree that he hasn't had a very good season this season. And I just think if he kept things a little bit more simple, he wouldn't get so much criticism and hatred from the fan base. So I would probably go with Elanga, Sancho, and Ronaldo. Although I have a sneaky suspicion he'll probably put Bruno on the wing. I don't think he'll drop Bruno, but let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Bruno did get dropped, but since we're going with what we want, I think a lot of people want to see Juan Mata, especially with the fact that it'll be his last game as well. I think that's an added little thing there. So you went for Sancho as well, didn't you? Sancho, Elanga, and Ronaldo.
Yeah,
just to make sure I got that correct. Cool. Right, Gav, who are you going for your front three? Who would you want to see?
So, assuming that Maguire doesn't play, Bruno will, because he's vice captain, isn't he? He's been captain the last few matches that Maguire didn't play. So I think the only question mark would be Sancho's fitness. If he's ready, I'd go Sancho, Ronaldo, and Bruno. If he's not, then I'd be more than happy to swap Sancho with Elanga and bring Sancho off the bench. So for me, I'd probably go with Elanga, Bruno, and Ronaldo.
Elanga, Bruno. Is that your final choice? Elanga, Bruno, and Ronaldo.
I'd like to see Sancho, but I don't know where he's at with his fitness. He's literally only just come back into training, so that was a long-term illness and a shopping spree in Paris. It takes a lot out of you. So yeah,
I'm gonna allow you to pick Sancho because everybody else picked Sancho. There's no point in not letting you have the choice as well. So yeah, we'll go with that. And Sati, who are you going for your forwards?
Forwards, I'm going to go Sancho, Ronaldo, and Elanga. Because I had Bruno as my number 10.
True. So you're going for Elanga on the right, I assume. Yeah.
Yeah, Elanga right.
So yeah, not a minute. I think he's looking like he's going to win that one, depending on what Ben says here. Who are you going for your strike force there, Ben?
Well, I'm going to break the mold. So I'm going, break the mold with two of them, but not the first one. So Ronaldo up top, because that's a given. And then, given the fact that he's shone in front of a full house, I'm going Garnacho on the left and Elanga on the right.
Oh, that is some youth, and that leaves me with something to actually work out there. You've screwed me
because
over,
he's proved himself in front of a full house in the most pressurised game that they could have played this season, and he's shone. So Crystal Palace will be a cakewalk for him, and he's a bloody good talent.
He is a good talent. I think you're more likely.
I don't have anyone that can counter argue against him based on form and effort for a Man United shirt. So, and I like Elanga, and I think those two would be
Carrington XC, isn't it?
Pace.
Carrington FC.
They've got pace. They've got that youthfulness. They've got that joyfulness that they want to play for the team.
Hunger.
They've got that legs as well. So Ronaldo can pretty much manoeuvre them around the pitch because of their age, and they'll do the hard yards, and they're rapid, and they've got loads of ability on the ball. And I'm fed up of seeing the usual two on the wide. So that's my two.
Enough. Well, that I think you're kind of getting your wish there with Elanga for totting up the votes. I mean, Bruno's got a few votes, but not in that position, not necessarily in that position that we're talking about. So
can I add though that I think Garnacho should start as he's got, and because his trump card is he won the FA Cup, the Youth Cup.
Yeah, you're allowed to. You're definitely allowed to use that. I've lost my thing now.
Hunger, desire, mentality. He had everything in that match, and I do think you got the likes of Hannibal Mabry, Anthony Elanga, and Garnacho, who are already knocking on the door. Elanga's now in that first team, and he's being picked quite regularly. Hannibal's knocking on the door. Garnacho, I think, is ready. I do. I think he's ready to make the next step, and for him to do what he did in that match last Wednesday was just brilliant, breathtaking, really good.
I'd be surprised if he doesn't get some sort of minutes. If it's not from the start, I think he'll get something. And I think Elanga's a little bit unfortunate to miss out on that Youth Cup final as well, isn't he? With being involved in the team and earlier on. Anyway, we'll just quickly run around and do some predictions for the game, and then we'll get off and let everybody go because we've been on quite a while. So let's go to you, Reese, first. Last chance to win these millions that Ben's putting forward for us in this pot. Go for it. Tell me what's going to happen.
Must be a serious rollover from all these times we haven't won it. So yeah. I'm going to be positive. I want to remain positive on this one and say 2-0 Man United.
Who's going to score first, mate?
Who's going to score first? Oh God, I'm just going to stick with Ronaldo. Going to stick with Ronaldo and say that he gets his 20, because I think he's still on for, what was he on, 19? So if he gets 20 goals, that he maintains his 20 goals in so many seasons, which is another stat that he'll be no doubt wanting to get hold of. So I'm going to say Ronaldo, 2-0 United.
Yeah, he'll definitely be motivated, even if just from a personal point of view. Obviously, he'll be motivated from a team point of view as well. But yeah, he's got something a little extra, and we know he likes his records and his personal accolades as well. Marcus, what's your score prediction? Have you got anything positive for me as well as Reese?
Yeah, I think we're going to win 2-1. I think we're going to go 1-0 down. Ronaldo's going to score the first. Alanga's going to score the second. And yeah, that's what I'm going for.
Like, it would be a positive, nice little winner from a youth player to seal the deal for us.
Yeah,
I like it. Gav, what are you going for?
Well, you wouldn't put it past Ronaldo to have one eye on the Golden Boot. Stranger things have happened. You know, what is he? 4 goals behind, 3 goals, something like that. I'm going to be, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to say a 3-1. I do think we'll concede. And I do think that the wingers and the service to Ronaldo and Ronaldo having that, like I say, the 20 goal a season thing, finishing on a high, and he'll want to be trying to get as close to that Golden Boot as possible. And, you know, to have that on his scorecard, in his record, in the worst Manchester United team, in the worst Premier League season, he got either the same or the close to the same amount of goals as the golden goal winner. It's just, it doesn't make sense, but it is, you know, it's Ronaldo. That's where he does. So I'm going to go 3-1. And I think Ronaldo will get another hat trick.
That is bold, but it's not out. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, that one. Sati, you're going to keep this positivity train rolling?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to go 3-2 United. If he starts, I'm going to go Sancho first goal scorer. If he doesn't start, I fancy Luke Shaw if he does play.
That is left field. Left back as well. And right, we'll come to you, Ben. Last, go for it. What's your score prediction? Your first goal scorer?
I'm going 3-1. Ronaldo 2. Garnacho with the third. 2 assists for Mata and Alanga.
That is thorough, very thorough. That is a full house of positive predictions. I don't think that's happened for a long while. Although Bainesy was just predicting that we'd lose 4-0 every time, just to try and reverse psychology it. So, you know, but that's good. I'm going to go for a win as well. I think we'll edge it 2-1. I'm not expecting us to be convincing, but I think we'll do enough to get over the line and get the job done and meet absolute bare minimum requirements for a season of getting at least into Europa League. So I think that will be that. So on that note, I'll thank my panel and I'll wish you all well, and hopefully we'll enjoy the game. I think Reese is doing the post-match show, I believe. So hopefully you can all join in for that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for all your comments. We've had quite a few comments in there tonight, and a lot going on the Twitter. It's hard to keep up when doing this, but so we'll bid everybody adieu. Thanks to Reese, Marcus, Gav, Sati, and Ben. I've been Simon. We've been All for United. Please like, subscribe, and share, retweet, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.